Hey everyone, welcome back to Realpolitik. Today we're going to be talking about the latest developments in Ukraine from March the 4th, 2023. Yesterday, right after I released my video, there were some new updates. We're going to discuss some of these updates today, and we're mainly going to focus on Bakhmut. But first, let's talk about some things happening in the northern sector. So the city of Kupiansk, which the Ukrainians took from the Russians last year during the Kharkiv offensive, counteroffensive, whatever you want to call it. The Ukrainians have now announced a mandatory evacuation from the city for civilians. Now, what this tells me is that the Ukrainians are not confident about being able to hold on to their positions, so the Russians are advancing, and it's very likely that Kupiansk could fall within the next couple weeks or couple months. It remains to be seen, but the Russians are trying to advance in this sector, and if we go further south, where you see Kremina, or some people call it Kremenaya, basically the Russians are advancing in the forest area, and there's some video footage that was released recently. I've put some of this footage on my Twitter. I can't put it on YouTube because of the strict community guidelines. You can go on my Twitter and see these videos that I've uploaded, but some of these videos are actually graphics, so be warned. Anyways, the Russians are basically storming Ukrainian positions, taking over Ukrainian trenches and taking prisoners. And basically, if the Russians are going to be after Bakhmut, if they're going to be thinking about taking Seversk, then if they take over this entire forest, they're going to be able to prevent the Ukrainians from resupplying themselves, from sending reinforcements through the north, through the forests. And the Russians, if they take over this entire forest, they'll basically cut off the Ukrainians from being able to send reinforcements. So that's vital if they want to focus on Seversk afterwards, but we'll talk about that in a little bit. So in Avdiivka, there seems to be some movement. If you look at these icons, the Russians are advancing towards Avdiivka from the north and from the west. They're trying to basically go forward and solidify some positions. Avdiivka, the front line has been basically stagnant for a long time, but essentially the Russians, what they want to do is they want to surround Avdiivka and create some kind of encirclement, just like what they're doing with Bakhmut right now. But Avdiivka is a very heavily fortified position. There are earthworks, entrenchments, and to the east it's difficult because of these bodies of water. So after Bakhmut, this is probably going to be potentially an area that the Russians are going to focus on. Now, if we focus on Bakhmut, the entire east bank of the Bakhmutska River has fallen, essentially. So this line is basically the Bakhmutska River. And this map hasn't been updated, but pretty much if you look at this map by Rybar, you'll see that the Russians, this was a few days ago, and this is from today. So you see the Bakhmutska River. The Russians have pretty much taken everything east of the Bakhmutska River. Now, one thing the Ukrainians did that's intelligent is they blew the last bridge in the north that would allow the Russians to cross over. So the Russians cannot cross over. All the bridges have been blown. This area was actually flooded. There was a dam right here that the Ukrainians blew, and this flooded this entire area. And recently, actually, what happened is that right here, where Ramove is, and there's fighting along the front lines, right here, there's a little stream or river, and the Ukrainians actually blew this bridge as well. So the Ukrainians are trying to cover their tracks, and there's no official announcement yet, but there's a lot of footage that has been released, and I'm going to show you some of this footage. The Ukrainians are pretty much retreating from Bakhmut. Some online commentators, some soldiers that have online accounts are stating that they've been told to withdraw from Bakhmut. So I'm going to show you some footage right here. This is also on my Twitter, by the way. I'll leave the link for my Twitter below in the description, by the way. So yeah, they put the sad music in the background, but yeah, you see the flowers and everything. The plants have withered away as well, and these guys look disheveled and muddy. And one guy's helping another guy kind of move along. And yeah, I mean, these guys are not on a main road. It doesn't look like. They're going through fields, and they're having to basically walk out of Bakhmut, just because of how muddy it is right now. Yeah, I don't know what he's saying in Ukrainian, but he's basically like sobbing and crying. So it's a somber moment for these guys. They've fought tooth and nail, and they've, you know, lost their friends and lost their limbs, and now they're having to withdraw, and it's a sad moment for these guys. And this is another one. For some reason, he's carrying a toilet with him. I'm not sure why, but guess he wants something to sit on. And then another one right here. So there's tons of videos like this showing soldiers withdrawing and evacuating Bakhmut. This one has no sound. But yeah, they're all on foot. It seems like maybe they don't have fuel for their vehicles, or maybe they think their armored vehicles or trucks will be targeted anyways. Anyways, this is a picture of the bridge that was destroyed. I mentioned the bridge near Ramove. It's this bridge right here. Now, if we get rid of all this, yeah, I mean, you see this road, the Russians are really very close to this road. I mean, this is like something like 300 meters or something. This is like rifle range, right? I mean, mortars, ATGMs, snipers, rifles, anything can reach the Ukrainians. If they try using the roads, it's very dangerous. That's one road. Another road is right here in the south. And again, the Russians are very close. They can hit anything that moves on these roads with artillery, mortar, snipers. So the Ukrainians are basically having to walk through the fields. And in many cases, they're moving along in small groups. They're not using any vehicles probably, so that there's less chance that they get targeted. And yeah, I mean, whoever's in charge of, whichever Ukrainian commander's in charge of Bakhmut is actually pretty competent, because what they're doing, the Ukrainians are actually, they've set up two lines of defense in the north and in the south. They're trying to prevent the Russian pincers from meeting. And their most professional soldiers are holding these lines. Their veterans are holding these lines, and then that gives the other troops, maybe the territorial defense or whoever else is in the city, to leave. And they're leaving gradually. They're not leaving all at once. It's not like a mad dash towards towards the towards the exit. So they're leaving gradually in stages. Like if you imagine an onion being peeled, they're just leaving it gradually. So maybe from this outer ring, and then from here, and then finally the rest will just withdraw, right? So that's what's happening in Bakhmut. And the question a lot of people are wondering is what happens after Bakhmut? Oh yeah, another thing to mention, Dubovo-Vasilivka, according to Russian sources, it's been taken. Some Ukrainian sources are denying this. If we look at the Rybar map, you can see that, like 70-80% of Dubovo-Vasilivka has been taken. This is from a few days ago. This is from now. If you look at both maps, you can notice the difference. You can see the arrows showing the Ukrainians withdrawing. And the Russians in the last couple of days, I mean, aside from taking the eastern bank of the Bakhmutska River, they're basically just consolidating their positions. They're just bulking out their positions. And in the south, you'll see the Budioni district. If we look at it from one map to another, here you see how this bulge has grown. So yeah, the Russians are just consolidating their positions. They're not really trying to. I think at this point the writing's on the wall, so they don't want to sacrifice any of their troops needlessly either. So they're just wearing down the Ukrainians, pounding them with artillery, and moving forward gradually. It's pretty much yeah. I mean, the Ukrainians are leaving. There's no denying it. So in any case, aside from this, a lot of people are wondering what comes next. And some people are thinking, well, are the Ukrainians going to keep up the momentum? Are they going to try to encircle Chasiv Yar? If they want to do that, then with this salient right here, they would have to basically hop from one settlement to another and expand this salient eastwards. And then this salient bulge right here, they would have to also, westwards. And then maybe they could meet somewhere in the middle and encircle Chasiv Yar. Of course, there's always the risk with Konstantinivka or from Chasiv Yar, the Ukrainians could launch counterattacks. So they would have to establish a solid defensive lines in front of Konstantinivka and in the south of Chasiv Yar. Then there's this forest area right here. They could creep up the forest area to the eastern sector of Chasiv Yar. And of course, when Bakhmut falls, the Russians are basically, they can also attack Chasiv Yar in a frontal assault as well. So that's one thing they could do. Then another option is Seversk. Again, they would have to go from one settlement to the other, and if they could expand northwards, then get to the Seversky Donets River, then eventually they could cut off Seversk, right? And that's where what I talked about earlier. You see these icons right here along the close to Kremina. That's where this comes into play. So if the Russians from Kremina move southwards, cut off any links to the Seversky Donets River, right? And then if they could just move up these settlements northwards, they could cut off Seversk. Now, Bilohorivka and this other settlement right here, which is Spirne. It's called Spirne. These have changed hands, I think, like a dozen times in the last year that this conflict has been raging. The Russians, after they took Lysychansk and Severodonetsk in quick succession, a lot of people were predicting that Seversk would fall very quickly soon after, but it still hasn't fallen. So the Ukrainians obviously have a very strong defensive position in Seversk, that's for sure. Now, some people are saying that after the fall of Bakhmut, that essentially the Russians have a huge invasion force in the north on the border with Ukraine, especially in the Kharkiv region. So there's an article about this, and this was about a month ago. Now, it's the Ukrainians themselves, Ukrainian officials, who are saying this, who mentioned this, and I think some U.S. officials. So if this is true, the Russians haven't made a move yet. They're saying they have 500,000 troops, 1,800 tanks, but some say they're waiting for the fall of Bakhmut. And if they are, who knows, we might see some large-scale offensive. There's also something like 100,000 Russian troops in Belarus as well. So we're going to have to wait and see what happens. But so far, that's it, guys. Anyways, if you watched till now, please like and subscribe. And I will see you guys in the next one. Thank you.